Oh boy, what's going on there is Poltergeist II, More Adventures of Just Your Average American Family, which 4 years later is still being played by some very strange visitors. We'll let you know if this sequel was worth the wait. I'm Jeffrey Lyons.
And I'm Michael Medved. In addition to Poltergeist II, we'll take a look at Death of a Soldier, a true story about a fascinating murder case involving a U.S. GI at the height of World War II. Letter to Brezhnev, a romantic story about the love affair between a working-class Liverpool girl and a Soviet sailor. In the shadow of Kilimanjaro, a thriller starring Timothy Bottoms and 90,000 bloodthirsty killer baboons. And finally, we'll review The International Tourney of Animation, a new feature-length film that offers some of the best animated shorts from around the world. And speaking of animated shorts, here's someone who is always animated, but not particularly short, Jeffrey Lyons, with his review of Death of a Soldier. Jeffrey?
But not evocative of
We disagree on Death of a Soldier. Our next film, Poltergeist II, follows the further adventures of the unfortunate Freeling family as they abandon their horribly haunted house, you remember, in the California suburbs and try to begin a new life in Arizona. Now, they move in with Grandma, always a good idea, who's nicely played here by Geraldine Fitzgerald. But they can't escape the unpleasant memories left over from the last film.
There's nothing to be afraid of. You know what we should be afraid of. You weren't there, were you? Why don't you tell me? And I tell. I keep telling you, no, not everything. I don't remember everything. Fine. Well, first the canary died. And then the tears went all funny. And I thought it was kind of exciting, you know. And then Caroline was gone. What is it?
She's got the right idea to cover her eyes. Now, any time that a sequel relies so heavily on flashbacks from the original film, you know that the sequel is in deep trouble. And Poltergeist II is in very serious trouble indeed. Now, the ridiculous plot here involves a 19th century preacher who comes back to life, and he's the leader of a gang of particularly ill-mannered ghosts, and he wants to take possession of the family's adorable little girl, Carol Ann. Now, as all these spurious spirits begin going bump in the night, the Freelings try to escape from Grandma's garage, but the ghastly ghouls have other ideas. Chainsaw belong in some other movie, but in this film, fans of the original Poltergeist are surely going to miss the deft touch of producer Steven Spielberg or even director Tobe Hooper, neither of whom had anything at all to do with this sleazoid sequel. The actors should at least be credited here with keeping straight faces most of the time, which is no mean accomplishment considering the idiotic and cheap-looking special effects. This is, in short, a rotten picture that doesn't stand a ghost of a chance with America's moviegoers, and if you're foolish enough to pay to see it, you'll be haunted by the feeling of having been gypped out of the price of admission.
Thank you, Vincent Price. Please, spooky review there, Michael. You know, it shows you how impossible it is, I think, in most cases, to make a sequel to a horror movie. Take The Exorcist 2 or The Omen 2 as well, because what's supposed to shock you and frighten you in a horror movie is something you haven't seen before. And right from the beginning of this movie, the little girl says, they're back, and it's just off to the races again. That's why the movie failed.
And you mentioned The Exorcist. The whole idea of The Exorcist is there are these evil demonic forces that are defeated ultimately by religion. In this movie, it's religion that is portrayed as the evil force. The big head ghost who's causing all the trouble is a former preacher, and whenever he appears, they play Christian hymns. And the whole message of the movie appears to be that you can only defeat that with paganism. There's an Indian medicine man who comes out of nowhere as the hero.
They welcome into their house right away without even knowing who he is or where he's coming from. And not only that, the people here don't react in normal ways. They do nothing in between the horrible things that happen to them, but sit back and wait for the next thing to happen.
And but we're talking about the next thing to happen. This film, the whole premise is that underneath the swimming pool in the first film, there was a burial ground. There's another burial ground underneath that they discover here. I'm sure there'll be a third burial ground, third layer down for the next one.
And know what's in there? I think just rejected scripts from other sequels.
I hope so.
Our next movie now is the week's most unusual film. Our quirky look
In the Shadow of Kilimanjaro introduces a new formula for terror. No, it's not killer sharks this time, or killer bees, or killer rats, or even killer tomatoes. This time, we're told to beware of killer baboons. That's right. The onslaught begins in drought-stricken Kenya as the ranger at a game reserve, played by Timothy Bottoms, explains to a local bureaucrat all about the grave danger posed by these slobbering simians.
Point is, other animals will migrate, look for food when they get hungry, but not the baboon. They stay put. If necessary, they kill and eat each other. What do you suggest? Well, I'm suggesting the situation could be worse than it looks. In my opinion, we ought to get the people of the Manga the hell out of here, at least for the drought season.
and feed them where?
Well, I don't know. Nairobi would probably be the closest.
How do you suggest I get them there?
I don't know, but I'm
There. You see the problem? Stupid feet. I am not going to evacuate an entire community over one isolated incident.
I agree. Who asked? Well, none of us staying. You're not going to be put out of business because you can't handle a bunch of bloody monkeys.
You don't understand. The bush isn't safe for either you or your men.
I will be the judge of that. So I got a few ideas on how to handle the situation. Do you have any idea how many baboons are out there looking for dinner time?
About 9,000.
What are you going to do? Go out with your rifles, shoot them all? Maybe. Game reserve, Tucker. You slaughter animals on a game reserve, you go to prison.
They should all go to prison for making this movie. Now, the only vaguely amusing moments in this miserable excuse for a motion picture are provided by the baboons, who proceed, as predicted, to munch on an interracial assortment of the local inhabitants. Now, their gnawing hunger has even caused the marauding monkeys to forget the elementary rules of road courtesy, as they refuse to aid a stranded motorist who needs help changing a tire. Can't wait for that soundtrack album. Now, In the Shadow of Kilimanjaro features so many close-ups of baboons baring their fangs that I expected to see a special credit line line at the end of the picture for a veterinary dentist. But however silly the monkeys may look, they're far more convincing than their human co-stars. For me, there were only two highlights in this film. One, in the middle of the action, when a hungry baboon suddenly hijacks a plane on us, and two, when a special message at the end of the picture informs us that what we've just seen is based on a true story. Right. Now, at that point, after wasting 90 minutes with this nonsense, there is nothing to do but to sit back and laugh.
Michael, it doesn't hijack the plane technically. It hides in the back of the small plane and causes the pilot to crash it into a mountain. Okay, bear your fangs, if you will, at this movie. Yes, some of the things you say have validity, but I sat there and I was scared. Yes, it's Jaws. Yes, it's the birds in the middle of a jungle, but I knew what was going to happen, but the hair started standing up on my arm. That's a terrible way to die, and it's wonderfully depicted.
Wonderfully depicted, Jeffrey. The acting is so lame. Why are the victims in these movies always so stupid, like the guy we saw in that clip? And why are they always such terrible actors?
You got a flat tire.
He continues putting on the bolts as the baboons are coming, and they're terrible actors, Jeffrey. All they're doing is shouting out their lines as if they're afraid that they won't be picked up on the soundtrack, which is a reasonable fear, judging from the technical incompetence of the camera work and the editing and everything else.
People who are frustratingly helpless. Only an active God can save them from what's going on here. It is totally plausible. I don't live in the middle of the jungle. If there were 90,000 baboons starving because of a drought, this is what they very well might do.
Jeffrey, you talk about frustratingly helpless. I felt helpless when I was forced to sit there and watch this movie.
Oh, boy, Mike. I think you saw a different picture with the same title.
If you're votes on this week's films, we disagreed on Death of a Soldier. Jeffrey found it flat with no sense of mystery or suspense, but I thought it did a good job presenting some compelling moral issues. We both thought that Poltergeist II was a sorry sequel that was silly rather than scary. And we split on Letter to Brezhnev. Jeffrey thought it was a touching, honest portrayal of an impossible love, but I thought it was just an impossible movie, foul, sleazy, and hopelessly contrived. We also disagreed on In the Shadow of Kilimanjaro. I thought that this thriller about killer baboons was one of the worst pictures of the year, and considerably less fun than A Barrel of Monkeys. But Jeffrey found himself terrified by the furry flesh chompers.
That's it for this week's sneak previews. Join us next week when we take a look at 4 new films, including At Close Range, starring Christopher Walken and Sean Penn as a father-son murder team, and Home of the Brave, starring cult performance artist Laurie Anderson. So until then, don't forget to save us the ILC.